We begin with the aerial assault launched by Iran against Israel. The Israeli army says more than 200 missiles and drones were fired from Iran. Most of the missiles have been intercepted by Israel, and the US, UK and Jordan have also shot down drones. Air raid sirens have sounded across Israel and explosions have been heard in Jerusalem. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard says the assault is in retaliation for an attack on its consulate in Syria, which killed several generals. It's the first time Iran has launched a direct military attack on Israel despite decades of intense hostility. While there's been widespread international condemnation of the Iranian attack, US President Joe Biden repeated America's ironclad support for Israel. Secretary General Antonio Guterres criticised a serious escalation by Iran. The UN Security Council has called an emergency meeting. Germany's Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock also condemned the attack, saying it could plunge the entire region into chaos. The British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak called the assault reckless and vowed to stand up for Israeli security. Well, the Israeli army has lifted its advice to people to go to air raid shelters. It says there's been little damage so far.
Iran launched dozens of surface-to-surface missiles towards the State of Israel. The vast majority were intercepted outside the borders of the State of Israel by our air defense systems. A number of missiles fell in our territory. We know of one girl who was injured and a strike at a base in the south with only minor damage to the infrastructure.
Let's go to Jerusalem now, where DW correspondent Tania Krämer is standing by for us. Tania, good to see you again. So, can you give us an update on the attack and the situation in Israel?
Well, as we just heard, we got some more details from the Israeli military here, saying that about 200 drones and missiles were mostly intercepted, as they put it, outside of Israel with their strategic partners, as they put it, and also through their air defense system. But there were some hits identified. They only told us about one on a military base in the south of Israel. So some made it through the defense. There's also one injured child, critically injured. We don't know, probably from shrapnel, what happened there. Now, we can still hear fighter jets in the air, because the army had also said, despite telling people they don't have to be near shelters, but this is an ongoing event, so to speak, and we can still hear in Jerusalem the fighter jets. We heard shortly before 2 a.m. Those explosions, potentially the interceptions that were really close by Jerusalem, but they were all over the country. So that was being heard, and now we also had in the past half an hour or so again in the north some air raid sirens going off in northern Israel, also on the occupied Golan Heights. That's probably more related to the cross-border attacks we've been seeing there in the past couple of weeks between Hezbollah and Israel. But also we understand diplomatically on that front that US President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu were on the phone. Of course, now the question is, how will Israel retaliate to that, or how will they respond to this attack?
Tania, briefly, if you could, how are Israelis dealing with the current situation?
I think everybody here is aware that this is a very dangerous situation. It's an unprecedented situation. The first time that we see such an escalation directly from Iran. There was always talk about that this could happen. But again, now it has become reality. And the question now that everybody here is, of course, asking is, where is this going from here? There's already a war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. We have the tensions and cross-border attacks in the north of Israel with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. Also attacks from the Houthis from Yemen in the past week. So where is this going? Can this be contained? And Israel had already said if there's a direct attack from Iran on Israel, then they would retaliate.
Thanks, Tania. Tania, Krämer in Jerusalem. Well, DW correspondent Mohamad Chreyteh is in the Lebanese capital, Beirut. He told us more about the reaction in Lebanon to Iran launching an attack against Israel.
Well, I just received reports on what appears to be drones and missiles over Lebanon's coast and cities. This needs further verification. But Lebanon actually announced that it has closed its airspace temporarily due to the escalation in the region. On the southern front with Israel, and this front has been active since October 8, not in an unusual way over the past 2 days, I would say, but we just received reports that cross-border shelling between Hezbollah and the Israeli army has intensified in the last couple of hours. The Iranian-backed militant group announced that it targeted air defense bases in the Golan Heights, meaning that this started simultaneously with the attack that Iran launched against Israel this night. Israel also is using extensive fire force to strike positions inside southern Lebanon.
All right, is that then a further escalation of the situation there in that region?
I mean, Hezbollah has already been involved in this conflict since October 8. It's been trading fire with Israel since Hamas launched the unprecedented attack on Israel on October 7. The party is a key member, as you may know, of the so-called resistance axis along the Houthis in Yemen, the Popular Mobilization in Iraq, and Hamas in Gaza. They all receive fund and logistic support from Iran. Now, Hezbollah's leader repeatedly said that it does not want further escalation with Israel, and that the combat that it's engaging with Israel on this front is only in support to Gaza, as he says. But the party is engaging in combat with the Israeli army on a daily basis so far. Now, are they willing to escalate the situation further? This question remains unanswered, but we will have to wait and see how Israel responds to the unprecedented attack by Iran tonight also.
Mohamad, briefly if you could, how are the general population there in Lebanon dealing with what's happening tonight?
Well, it definitely disrupted the life of the Lebanese. There's a sense of fear and anxiety all over the country. Beirut's nights are usually wild and busy. It hasn't been the case last night, and tonight it's significantly calmer since yesterday, as everyone was anticipating this attack. A couple of hours ago, people have been rushing to petrol stations to fill their car tanks. I've seen the queues on petrol station, and this is out of fear of possible escalation in the coming few days. Everyone is watching the situation very carefully in Lebanon.
Thanks, Mohamad. Mohamad Chreyteh in Beirut. Benham Taleblu is a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies in Washington, D.C. He told me the attack by Iran is unprecedented.
Yes, pleasure to be with you. Unprecedented and historic. You know, for almost 4 decades, the Islamic Republic of Iran had been fighting a shadow war with the Jewish state. You know, they have been chanting for over 4 decades, death to Israel. They put their money where their mouth is, but now it really is indeed coming out of the shadows. 2 quick reasons why it's unprecedented. Number one, the Islamic Republic has never fired projectiles like ballistic missiles, for example, from its territory publicly against Israeli territory. Number two, in the public ballistic missile operations that the regime has been engaging in, at least 11 or 12 since 2017, for example, it has never struck a defended target. For example, all the places Iran did strike with ballistic missiles, Iraq, Syria, Pakistan, were undefended targets against air and missile defenses. So Israel, in fact, is one of the countries with the most advanced layered air and missile defenses, making it an exceptionally hard target for these missiles, which begs the question of what were the Iranians hoping to achieve? Was this more of a test run? Was this an attempt to layer drones and ballistic missiles? Lots of operational questions here. And the biggest one is, indeed, how will Israel respond?
Correct. How will Israel respond? But tell me this, what did you make of the type of attack? It's given Israel plenty of time to prepare, right?
In some way, the Iranians for a little over a week and a half had been publicly telegraphing that there would be an operation. And the first phase of the military operation that commenced was with lower and slower flying drones. Some had read this as an attempt to give the Israelis time to prepare, but I actually think that would not be the case. The firing of drones first and marrying it with ballistic missiles later is because the flight time for some of those ballistic missiles can be as short as 8 to 12 minutes to traverse over about 1,600 kilometers. For the drones to avoid existing air and missile defenses and hug the terrain they fly over, it indeed might take several hours. So the pre-firing and the publication of the drone strike, I don't think was an attempt to prepare Israel to make the strike less successful. I think it was an attempt to pair it together with a higher and faster flying missile.
All right, what's being said in Iran?
Very interestingly, you've had lots of pro-regime media, semi-official media related to the IRGC carrying, in essence, the full copy-paste of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps press statement, essentially saying that, yes, indeed, this was a public operation. They are claiming success. They are claiming military targets were struck. So there is a fair amount of braggadocio in the Iranian press, leading one to believe that this operation, as risky and bold and game-changing as it was, also was intended to signal resolve to a domestic audience as much as it was looking to signal resolve to a foreign audience.
Are we seeing a change in Iran's approach to the decades-long hostilities with Israel?
Slowly, we are seeing an approach to how the Islamic Republic of Iran adjudicates that hostility with Israel. Some, I think, today have been looking at the missile strikes and the kind of embracing of the overt posture with Israel as Iran moving full force out of the shadows. I don't think it's full force out of the shadows. It is marrying the existing asymmetric threat that the regime poses and slowly layering on elements of this conventional threat architecture. The regime is trying to have the best of both worlds here, and that's why I think even though the Israelis were very successful at intercepting the vast majority of these projectiles, the regime is not done with, marrying these threats up together and trying to dangle the capability to respond to Israel as a sort of Damocles.
Now, we're running out of time, but briefly, if you could, what do you expect from Iran's proxies in the region?
Already there are allegations that the Shia militias in Iraq had attempted to fire land attack cruise missiles at Israel. That's reported but not confirmed. That Hezbollah had slowly began to also earlier in the day fire some rockets over the border. I expect them, in case there is an Israeli overt military response, to begin to fill the gap. And the question is, if America does get more involved directly, I think those Shia militias would move to begin targeting American assets.
Benham Taleblu, a senior fellow from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies in Washington, D.C. Thank you for being on DW News.